Folks, we've got another awesome Big Boy Pants Golf podcast episode for you today. I've got Jake Spann on from 54 Live. He's got a podcast with his partner. I believe his name is Digsies.
Yes, that's correct. That is his name that he goes by on there. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, is that his real name or is that his nickname?
Man, I have never actually asked. You know, it's one of those things when you get somebody that has like a unique enough name, if you don't ask in like the first 15 minutes of knowing them, then you can't ever ask. So maybe this will be like an opportunity for me to like, halfway ask him like, hey, buddy.
It's almost like a one night stand.
Yes. Yeah.
The next morning, you just have to go with it and be like, your name, you, special, you.
That was fun.
I know you. This is good.
Yeah. Or like, if you play golf with somebody and the very next round you go out there and you're just like, ooh, I know this guy. I don't know his name. But you're like, what's up, bro? How are you doing, man?
You guys are top 53. You're actually number 52 on Apple Podcasts for golf podcasts.
Yes.
That's insane.
Thank you. It's really impressive for us. I mean, we're just two guys talking about what we care about and we enjoy, which is golf. I mean, it's a lot of fun, especially with where things are at right now. There's literally content to talk about every single week. And, we're just talking about what we care about, which is honestly the interesting situation of LIV Golf, because we're watching a birth of a legacy and a birth of something completely different and nuanced in every single week. It's so much fun. It really is.
I'm a huge fan of your podcast already.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'm going to say it's not because of Digsies.
That's not fair. He's awesome. He's great. He keeps me on the rails, man. He really does, because there's so much that we can talk about and go on about and really just enjoy. But if I don't have a captain to direct the ship, I can just roam off into the woods for 5 hours, and that's not good for anybody,
I'm Robin Williams, captain, my captain. I've got this for Digsies right here.
Oh, gosh.
So I'm listening to him. Yeah, I'm listening to him, and I'm like, is this like a Mark Wahlberg Boston accent, or is this J-Lo, Jenny from the Block? Is he Brooklyn? What is? And then when he's like Long Island, I was like, oh no, literally probably the worst accent you can have. And I know this. Digsy knows this. My roommate first year in college was from Long Island.
Okay.
And here's your test for Digsy. Have him say the word sword, as in the weapon, or as in the fish.
The word sword. Okay. I will keep an eye on that.
Watch when he pronounces the W.
Okay. Just listen for that. We don't actually do FaceTime when we do recording, so I'll
he'll
have to
say, get it in there next episode, and then just be like, somehow get him to say it, and he'll say sword. And you're like, that's not how you pronounce the word. A hard W.
There's certain words that we us folks from the Dallas area. That's where I grew up, by the way. So that's where my accent's from. There's certain words that we have that we struggle with. Like if I'm in a general conversation, some words like the word cookie, I have to like put a little bit of extra, whatever on to get it out right. But so we all have our different words that are rough. So the word sword, though, I'll make sure I'll try and prank him with that one next time.
Well, also this guy, my roommate back in the day, he was breaking down the percentages of food, and he did carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, but it didn't add up to 100. What? So I was like, what was the remaining percentage? And then he explained it as vitamins. So that's my impression of Long Island. Also, Digsy, I dated a girl from North Babylon. I'm lucky to be alive. Let's get into this episode. I love your show. I've listened to the episodes. I know that you basically came on for the second season.
Yes, correct. It was a lot of fun. As you got involved with DJ on the internet, Josh, and I mean, it was just super cool where all of us fans that actually are LIV Golf fans, we just kind of came out of the woodworks and we're not writers, we're not producers, we're not in media, we're just people who legitimately enjoy talking about this and found the creative outlet for it. And I hooked up with Diggsy and I was like, hey man, I'd love to be on your show and just talk with you about this because this is something that's fun for me to talk about. And so he offered me to come on there. He actually tolerated my voice, which is A-okay. And next thing you know, we're just having fun and keeping on going with it. And so it's just so cool to see where it's at. It really is. And man, thanks for the positive comments. I really appreciate it.
Folks at home, in case this whole conversation takes a dark turn, remember that Jake reached out to me.
That's true. That's true.
So,
I did
so
reach out to him.
Fair play here. We're going to go into, you just were at LIV Tulsa.
Yes. Yeah.
You experienced the energy. Let us know.
So you can't put into words and really understand it if you just watch it on television. When you watch it on television, it's a beautiful event. They do a great job of showcasing the golf. LIV Golf, though, it's more like going to a Disney World park for a day with golf happening to be there than it is just going to a golf tournament. There's so much there that I promise you, if you are on the autism spectrum, you will definitely feel overwhelmed when you walk in there. At least the way they had Tulsa set up. They had Tulsa set up where they're busing us in from a college university nearby. And when you show up, you're literally walking, 80 yards uphill to where everything is, the fan village. They have a BMX show during the pre-round. They have the live stage rocking. They have the driving range, the putting range, the fan village down on the corner where you can hit balls in a simulator and embarrass yourself. They have all these cool things going on. And then they have like 7 nightclubs. They have 7 full-on nightclubs like while you're out there. It's just insane when you really think of it from a logistics purpose. It will overwhelm you. And it kind of did me at first, like in a cool way. When you really think about just how much they're putting into this event, it's so much more than just a golf tournament. It really is. It's like going to Disneyland. It really is.
In your podcast episode with Digsies, before this event, you stated that you and your, Oklahoman golf buddies were talking about the LIV event and not the event in Dallas.
Yeah. And I'm at a regular, just an average Joe's country club, not very many 70 plus guys we talk to. Most of our guys are, mid 30s, late 40s, that kind of thing. It's the price range of our golf club that just kind of makes it that good for us. And I'll tell you, yeah, none of us were talking about Byron Nelson at all, which a year ago would not have happened. It's often a conversation point of, hey, are you actually going to go to that? No, I'm not really going to go to it. It costs a lot of money to go to Dallas. Everyone was pumped about this. Hey, I'm going to be there Friday. I'm going to be there Saturday. Are you going to go up there a night early? You want to go play night golf at this one course down here? You want to go hit up Mahogany later on? You want to go hit up a sushi bar later on? That was the conversation this past month. And it was so funny because I didn't even realize it. Because I remember, you and I, we talk about golf. We talk about LIV Golf. We talk about this, that, or the other. So it's not odd for us to have this conversation. But when I stepped back out of my shell and thought about it for a second, I was like, wait a second. I haven't heard one conversation this week about the Nelson. And the Nelson's putting in the party hole. And they're doing this and they're doing that. And they're trying to make sure the Dallas guys still show up to the event. Because there are some big name Dallas golfers. Scheffler, Spieth, etc. And yet all of the conversation was about LIV this past month. And that just shows to me that we are emerging from infancy into actually seeing a bigger, deeper, program overall that's beyond what it was a year ago. It's amazing.
I mean, what a great opportunity to have a YouTube channel or podcast now and chart it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Even if you start now, because I think there's so much of an opening in terms of an unbiased and fair take about what's going on, because, the Golf Digest, they're obviously a marketing partner for the PGA Tour. All these guys, they have their agendas. So as I sent you that article earlier, I think it was golf.com had covered the LIV Golf Tournament, gave the scores and breakdown, but at the bottom it still had to mention, oh, by the way, sports washing, et cetera, trying to always throw shade at a new product. Yeah. And there's obviously a reason, because they're in bed with the PGA Tour. Their financial strength depends on the PGA Tour succeeding.
LIV is not. One thing I've learned is that they're very free about who they're talking to and who they want to partner with and whatnot. The guys who are talking shade on them, literally are talking shade on them, have press passes to the events.
You can ask Digsy this, or Digsies with the S at the end.
Sure, you're good.
He interviewed Alan Shipnuck.
Right.
And to me, that's one of those guys who you just referred to, who went out of his way to kind of tilt the narrative in a negative fashion. And then, now that Liv is doing well, he always wants to get back in the events. But remember, he was back in, I think was it in London?
Yeah, he was at the
Where he
very
was
first event. Remember,
calling.
this is right after like he was there for like the first part of all the events because he was still finishing up his book, doing the book tour in relation to Phil. So he's obviously going to be there. And so yeah, he was very very rough at first. He's gotten more chill over time, but he definitely was a little rough at first. And I get it. It's scary when you're like, is this actually going to happen? Because remember, until that very first tee shot happened, Live is a figmentation of the imagination. And so everything before that first tee shot in London is like, what are we doing here?
I did a video on him actually, and it just charted that actual breakdown with him talking to Greg Norman. Greg Norman's in the background. And then, obviously Shipnuck says, your goons escorted me out of here. But if you look at the video itself, you can see Shipnuck's eyes looking at a camera behind him. So to me, it was staged. And then sure enough, within a few hours, he's on CNN discussing it, pitching the same narrative. Though, remember, CNN also does something like Golf Saudi, has some associated with. So it gets very strange. It's hard to know where the lines are drawn because they're all over the place.
Yeah. And that's kind of the same thing with like corporate sponsorships. You were texting me earlier about, FedEx possibly. We've had some weird stuff happen in the past month. We've seen Honda leave and say, hey, we're not going to be a sponsor of a non-elevated event anymore. We saw that this past weekend, AT&T said, hey, we're backing out of the Byron Nelson. We're not going to be the Byron Nelson partner anymore. And they're also talking about backing out of the Pebble Beach as well. And, the more and more you see it, the more it makes sense because, hey, PGA Tour, not growing their audience. Mathematically, not growing their audience. And so their PGA Tour is asking for them to pony up more money for the prize pool, everything like that, without actually giving them a bigger audience perspective, right? And so we're seeing these companies saying, hey, we're going to back out. We're going to back out. We're going to, pull our partnership. The real question starts to become, who's going to be that first company that decides, the first big name company to walk through the door and say, we're going to be openly a partner with Liv. And it's going to be a bloodbath for them, but it needs to happen. Someone needs to be the bold guy to do that.
And here's what's interesting. Raytheon just got turned down by the PGA Tour. They already deal with Saudi Arabia. Are we in that point right now?
I don't understand that at all. That made no sense to me. I was like, you just lost a big sponsor and another big company is coming along that has the money to be able to be your sponsor for a long time. And you're telling me you're too good for them. You don't want the optics of it. Like at what
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Just when FedEx just puts out all these press releases about signing a deal with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And that's their big sponsor for the FedEx Cup.
It just makes no sense to me. At the end of the day, to me, money is green. All right. I don't care where it comes from or whatnot. I really don't. So I've never understood like the optic situations of it or the getting hurt about, oh, well, they sponsor this or hey, they do that or whatever. So it just weirded me out that I was like, why are you turning down a sponsor? You're losing sponsors right now. Give some positive news. And they're not doing that. And it's surprised to me, especially after the bad news from the Byron Nelson big week, which is still frustrates me. I'm from Dallas originally, so understand, like I used to go to the Byron Nelson when I was at TPC Las Colinas. And when they moved it, just irritated the heck out of me because that course had all the legacy. It's where Byron Nelson actually was. And then, we have the two events there, the Colonial and the Byron Nelson, and neither one of them got elevated status. Are you kidding me?
Disrespectful to Ben Hogan as well.
Yes, because the Colonial is the Ben Hogan
there you go
event. So yeah, just pissed me off. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with them right now.
Well, I will say this in terms of your predictions, and you did pick two of the guys in the playoff and DJ, because I know you picked Henrik Stenson, Uline, Gooch, and then DJ and Cameron Smith.
Yes.
DJ comes through in the clutch again. I thought when he missed the putt on his 17th hole, which was the 17th, that it's over for him. Makes birdie on the 18th hole, makes the putt on the playoff.
DJ he had certain players on Live Golf have what I like to call a superpower, some unseen antic about them that is just beyond the scope of a normal person, normal golfer, normal pro golfer even. For DJ, that literally is his ability to wipe his memory clean when he needs to. I mean, he'll still remembers the shot because immediately afterwards on the post round interview, he tells the entire story of his 7 on number 10. But for whatever reason, he has this ability to just completely wipe the slate clean when he needs to. And it was amazing because even his birdie on number 18 to get in the playoff, he didn't have an easy birdie. He had to hit from behind a tree on a downward sloping lie.
Got a good bounce.
I mean, it was impressive to see that happen. And I knew that he had been playing in the right direction, but to finally see him put it all together and get that win, get that confidence back, get that boost back, it was really cool to see. And I think LIV Golf got what they wanted. This was their first marquee playoff. Now that we've had plenty of playoffs because the LIV Golf situation with 3 rounds leads to more playoffs, right? Because you have less holes, so everyone's going to stay tighter in theory.
Well, they had the Boston one, right? It was DJ, Joaquin, and who was the third guy? Oh, Anibon.
Yeah.
And then I think Cam Smith was right there. Cam Smith and Lee Westwood are right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have been. So they've had moments, but now everything after the first few events seems like a super upswing. And the PGA Tour, by contrast, who's going to watch this now?
I want to. I actually turned it on whenever we had the rain delay on Sunday for 2 hours. And I was so excited to see Jason Day win. Congrats to you, Jason Day. That dude's battled for a long time to get back where he needs to be. And it's just awesome. You and I both know that he was somebody targeted by LIV. Everything about him as far as profile is somebody who would be targeted by LIV.
Well, my feeling was if he was ending up at like the 70th to 90th spot this year, it wasn't for the elevated events, he's gone.
Yeah.
But with him, you got the finicky back, any moment that can go out.
So he had the vertigo issues that actually hurt him during the 2016 U.S. Open Championship at Chambers Bay, and that was huge because he was going into that one looking like a stud nugget, and it ended up being a complete situation where it was Brandon Grace and Spieth down the pipeline. But yeah, it was so cool to see though this past week to see LIV, finally get their marquee matchup in a playoff, because they've always had in the playoffs either a bunch of the mid-tier guys or one superstar, and not quite 2. Remember, Gooch in Singapore, I don't consider him a superstar yet. I consider him on the upswing.
He would be the home of the LIV Tour.
That's a fair assessment. He's somebody whom broke through recently and hasn't quite transitioned to celebrity status, because there's a different tier level. There's that that mid-tier guy, that guy that you just consistently trust, a Charles Howell III player who might win sometime. You have that elevated player who's on the rise, on the upswing, definitely competing in many events, might end up with 10, 15 wins over 10 years, but he's just he's not quite the superstar. But
you need a major.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you need to win a major.
Mm-hmm. When you don't get a major, it definitely shortens your legacy. And that's why, but then at the same time, you got Ricky Fowlers who are celebrities despite never winning a major. So,
well, you got to have that certain boy band look.
He was actually in a boy band. Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you remember this, but back like 12 years ago, some company that was sponsoring several players decided that they were going to have Bubba Watson, Ricky Fowler, Hunter Mahan, and Ben Crane make a boy band. And that there are still videos on YouTube about this. You can go watch them.
I've watched
them. Horrible.
But it's funny because back in the day, Bubba Watson, by then a grown man, was bike riding around with young Ricky Fowler.
Yeah, young Ricky Fowler.
But that's interesting because that's exactly what the whole shenanigans are with the PIP qualifications. You could give this objective seeming standard with Q ratings and all this other stuff to get guys who are popular in the PIP ratings. And they were going to try to use that, I think, as qualifications as to your skills to get you in tournaments.
Yeah.
There was that gray area for a while. You're like, so he's just very popular by your metrics, and that makes him qualified to get in because you want to get the stars in.
Right. And by that kind of standard, you could literally say that the guys from Good, which are one of the YouTube channels, you could tell me that those guys belong in the PGA Tour based on the PIP qualifications, because they're I will argue that they're growing the game more than many of the guys on the PGA Tour right now. Not hating the PGA
1,000%,
Tour players, but
10,000%.
Yeah, that's not a hate toward the PGA Tour players. It's just different avenues, different modems of what they're doing. So when you use things that are not player metrics as far as your actual skill level on the course and ability to play when needed to, it's very difficult to really justify certain players over others. Like, are you going to tell me that because Gary Woodland won 2 majors, that Gary Woodland deserves to be in every elevated event, even if he can't break 80 this week? He's playing good, by the way, but I'm just giving him as an example because he's somebody who's had a rough couple of years. You know?
Well, I'll ask you this right now. I've got this Strong Island UFC T-shirt on.
Okay.
Think about the UFC if these guys didn't have press conferences and they weren't talking trash. How much less interest would there be? 90%?
Yeah. Well, remember, the UFC would have gone bankrupt if it wasn't for the show The Ultimate Fighter. And golf never had that. I mean, they tried making up stuff with like the big break and Full Swing was kind of a nice attempt. There were people in my church that were literally excited about Full Swing. They're like asking me about Full Swing. And I'm like, I didn't like it because it was not a narrative across the entire series. It was 30-minute segments focusing on a player.
Well, it's a softball pitch.
Yes.
And you miss it. I mean, you have a once in a lifetime opportunity to have this be there at the right time, right moment, and you focus your first episodes, Jordan Spieth and JT.
Yeah.
Frenemies. I mean, come on.
Yeah. It was a cool series in idea. I don't like the idea of, okay, you spend 35-40 minutes getting me invested in Jordan Spieth and JT, and now I don't hear about them again for the entire rest of the series. That was my problem with it. They could have re-edited the entire series and made it to where you're seeing everything as it progresses over the course of a season. By the time they get to the Mito Pereira episode, I'm already done with the PGA Championship because I've seen it 17 times.
That was a traumatic moment for me because had he parred, I would have won $300. I was one of 2 guys.
Man, I'm so sorry.
I was one of 2 guys who picked him. I would have finished second in a pool. And I was just like, just please. I randomly picked him because there's a YouTube clip of him where it's like, listen to the sound of his striking a ball. That's the only reason I knew Mito Pereira then. So I randomly filling out, your brackets, and I picked and then he blows it. And I was like, you feel sick because I've been watching like, just hold on, buddy. Because the final round, it seemed like he was slowly leaking a little bit oil the whole time. And I was like, you can just hold on. You can make it, dude.
Yeah. And you can always tell whenever a player is just holding on for dear life.
Well, that was Koepka at the Masters was already like, exactly. You could just start seeing, you're like, here we go, fans. You start leaning back like, ugh.
Well, and it was with the Masters, it was just sad because I feel like every rain delay further hindered his ability to win the Masters. I really do. I feel like if we go back and play that entire event with 2 less rain delays at the last round and a half, he still wins it. He finds a way to win it. And also if they shoot Patrick Cantlay, I mean, just take him off the course and just throw him in the woods somewhere.
Well, it's weird because you have these PGA Tour guys that typically, because PGA Tour itself put out this little promo video or little cutesy clip on Instagram a couple of days ago, and people didn't know who any of the guys were. They didn't know who Hongwa was. So you're actually advertising the fact that people don't know your stars even.
Which is,
when you think about it that way.
That's a big thing that I love about LIV Tulsa. Okay, and they do this at every LIV event. So you have the 10,000 plus people that are there, and most of them are casuals. You can hear it in the conversation, the casuals, right? They know Phil, they know Poulter because the hat, the obviousness. They know Bubba because Bubba's pretty obvious. They feel Brooks as he walks up because you feel his presence before you see him. It's just the truth. No joke. There were like 3 girls who pushed me out of my way on the birdie shack to get like video footage of him.
Jake, do you want to admit your man crush right now?
Yeah, I mean, I am wearing a Smash t-shirt. It's not so much a man crush as it is just jealousy of just like, bro, like
living the dream,
I want to party with you, bro. Like,
we couldn't hang. I don't think we could hang.
I couldn't hang. I'd be tapped out by like minute 45. But real talk though. So the casuals are out there and you go down the driving range. They have placards of every player's name. But more importantly, they have pictures. They have 5-foot pictures of each player next to their section. So you're getting to see Laurie Cantor's face. You're getting to see Even Siwon Kim's face. You're getting to see all of these players' faces.
Awesome point. Because awesome point in that it's the role of the promoter to promote the players.
Right.
And the PGA Tour.
If you don't have a hype man, you could be the best in the world, but if you don't have any hype man, you ain't crap.
And you could be not that great, but if you have a good hype man, you know, Jake Paul runs that. You don't have to be good at something. If you can hype it up and draw interest, then you're winning the game.
Exactly. I mean, half of what makes boxing interesting, boxing is literally for most fights, most even championship fights, it's literally 10 minutes of watching one guy just wail the crap out of one guy. But we enjoy watching it because of the build-up, the promotion, the video quality, and the smack talk and the promoters. I mean, where would boxing have been if Muhammad Ali had kept his mouth shut? We wouldn't know who he is.
Why isn't there any smack talk or enough? There's like 2% amount of smack talk, and it comes off as catty and petty, like when you have DeChambeau and Cantlay or that kind of thing, or the fans jumping in and trying to be dismissive of DeChambeau in that PGA Tour tournament when he lost. I guess he lost the playoff to Cantlay. So but refined, good smack talk, it's the best stuff in the world.
It's healthy. Now, golf being historically what's called the gentleman's game, it's kind of a little awkward. But the problem is with wokey culture kills that vibe. Because Tiger tried to do it.
We need to bring it back.
We need to. Tiger.
Why did he apologize? Why did he
shouldn't have apologized. He should have leaned into it and said, "I should have given him 2 because I didn't know you guys needed 1 too."
Boom.
You know,
I love that.
You know, the point is though is that smack talk when you're on the course, right? When you're on the course, you know you rib your friend. Your friend hits it in front of the red tees. You're like, "Hey, pull your pants down, bro. You got to walk to your ball with your pants down on your ankles." You know, when you're on the tee box and he shanks it into the woods, you just hit him some hedge clippers and say,
it's
go find
mental warfare out there.
It is, but they don't lean into that, and that could be so much more fun if you heard it. Now, I do love what LIV does. If you watch the broadcast, and Jerry Foltz mentioned this on Sunday. He was very much like, "Hey, we're totally okay with showing the players having the meltdowns because it humanizes them. It makes them real."
Is he just focusing on Siwon Kim making a 10 on every other hole?
No, he was focusing more on like Charles Howell in Tucson with his bunker rage. I mean, I've been watching the guy for 20 years. I've never seen him do anything like that, you know. And I was like, he's human. Hey, he's human, you know. And so you're right though. It was super, super cool for like even last year when they didn't have any commercial responsibilities. So they let the players cuss. You know, if Matty Wolf wanted to go on a tirade on camera and yell 50 F-bombs in 30 seconds and break his putter, they just showed it. And they don't do it as much anymore, but they still do it some.
The best commentary, it might have been the Mayakoba. Oh. They cut away to these sausages being grilled. And Faraday says, "Did you see the size of that sausage?" And then you could tell, I think it's Foltz. It's silent now because he's laughing, and you can just tell what's going on back there.
Right.
But you don't get that anymore. We just get like grumpy Paul Azinger.
Yeah. Oh God. You know, and for somebody who got in a fist fight with his own caddy on the course one year, it's really amazing how toned down and a symbol of stoicness that Azinger is supposed to be and calls for. And I'm like, dude, you fist fought your caddy at the senior PGA. Like it wasn't even the regular PGA or a major. It was literally a senior PGA event, and you fist fought him. I'm like, chill, bro. Anyway,
well, yeah, I mean, obviously the Tulsa event is a huge success. We've got the PGA coming up.
Yeah, I'm excited for this week. I really am. I mean, it sucks that. So LIV has a lot good players there. Sadly, Martin Keimer is sitting out due to his recovery. But then we also have Siwon Kim there. Here's my question. How many players does Siwon Kim beat on the first 2 rounds? Because that's all he's playing. He's not breaking the cut.
He might finish DFL because he's used to it now. It happened I was going to do an episode where it was like Rick Shields has broken 75 more times than this, you know, this year. Well, I mean, I just couldn't get it out, and it was just pretty much a one-line joke.
Right.
It was just like this guy. It was like, what is going on with him?
How do you get it? I don't get it.
And it was like by 6 strokes and 8 strokes. So there's 47th, and then you're like in a whole nother division.
Yeah. I mean, and granted, he has not finished in last in 2 straight events. High five to him. I think he shot 2 under, which is a season best for him on Sunday
Might
at
be might
Cedar
be one of
Ridge.
Phil's darker moments when you
Yeah. Yeah, I
lose to
know, right?
C1.
Yeah. And it's just, to me, it's so weird that he's actually in the PGA Championship. And I'm very curious to see if he doesn't have a mysterious injury immediately after he doesn't make the cut at the PGA. And all of a sudden we see like Andy Ogletree, who shot a freaking 8 under off the bench on Sunday, came in completely cold and shoots an 8 under on a course he hasn't been playing all week. That's so freaking cool, isn't it?
Yeah, but do you think now, exactly with a guy like Ogletree, they just brought him in a couple events ago or so. Is there a way to like try to get the guy who's playing well in the Asian tour in earlier if there's a guy who's doing a C1 Kim? Is there going to be a C1 Kim rule next year?
Oh, wow.
They should just call it
I
that because it's
Yeah,
unprecedented.
I think what I hope to see, remember that the captains have about 25% ownership of their team, at least. I think Phil has higher. I think DJ has higher. But what I hope to see is a situation where teams have kind of a more control. Like DJ walks over, hey, bro, you ain't cutting it. Like, you want to be an ace or you want to be out of this place, you know?
There needs to be some way to prevent this type of situation because it's like this doomsday scenario that's actually happening
Yeah,
where
well,
this
and
guy.
more importantly, it's not fair. It's not fair to the Ironheads. You got 3 guys who are competing, who are finding a way, not every week, but most weeks to be, at least relevant. And then you got one guy who you're just like, bro, can you just break 75? Can you just break 75? And he doesn't.
No,
That's
no, it was amazing in the beginning, and it was just kind of like it really reduces the field down to just 47 guys.
well, and more than that, like it keeps the Ironheads from being able to develop any narrative beyond just Siwon Kim. I don't even in hindsight, like I won't even notice Kevin Na. I will look at Siwon Kim first on the leaderboard because that's all I see when I see the Ironheads. I see Siwon Kim.
C1 Kim watch. Right, scroll right down to the bottom, see where he is.
Yes, exactly. Oh, great! He just hit a 9 on the
Yeah.
first hole, which was a par 5 with nobody
I
else
think that was the
making
second
above.
hole. He made a 10. He literally made a 10,
Yeah,
and they were just like already melting down. You're like, dude, you just started. What happened?
yeah. Like, did you just shank a ball in the woods to start
Yeah.
off? Is Greg Norman secretly paying you to shoot dead last every single event?
But you know what? I also looked at his other tournaments before that, and it
Mhm.
was like a 70th at a random event
Yeah,
off the Live Tour. So he's been trending poorly for a while.
yeah, and I don't know what it is. For last year, I kind of gave him benefit of the doubt and said, well, maybe it's because he's going from the Asian tour over to being playing in America means different oils in your food. That if your guts ain't right, you ain't playing right. And we saw that in Bangkok last year, where all the players that were over 30 and American, they struggled
Well,
because
what was it? Brandon Grace pulled out, right?
well, he
And
actually had an abdominal injury in that event due to dehydration and poor diet.
well, dehydration.
Mm-hmm.
You also have, obviously, if you're not used to that Bangkok heat. My thing is, I lived in Thailand for 5 years.
Yeah.
If you're not playing with an umbrella going,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what the optics are. You're not going to make it through the round.
You're
You're going to
not.
pass out, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like. So when I'm watching, I'm like, who's not wearing an umbrella? You go in there dehydrated. I don't know how you do 3 back-to-back days like that.
Yeah.
In 100-degree heat.
In monsoon season. And then the worst part, if you remember this, they had the nearest hotel facility that could actually house the live staff and live people that didn't have to be on the grounds every single day, like so the players, the Don Belue and all the commentators and the broadcast team. They were 2 hours away from their hotel at the end of every round.
Well, you know what? That could mean you're only 7 miles away, but the traffic.
Right.
I mean, you have to always remember the Bangkok the Thailand traffic is. You could sit in a taxi for 40 minutes and you went 300 yards.
Right. And that event, it's so sad because that course, Stone Meadows, was so beautiful. But everything about how the event was for that one, it beat those players up bad. It beat the staff up bad. It beat everybody up pretty bad. You could tell. And so I'm thankful we don't have any one of those situations. But I get that's because that kind of situation was why I was giving Siwon Kim such a good pass last season. But then when it continued this season and has continued still, I'm getting more and more curious as to why they haven't just, done it yet. I'm thinking it's going to happen after the PGA Championship, though, assuming he doesn't make the cut.
So getting back to the somewhat original point, I don't know if he beats anyone. He might, because he's perfectly capable of shooting 83.
Well, hold up. PGA Championship does have PGA of America teaching coaches.
20 of them. So I say, okay, here's a better question. How many of the PGA of America, the teaching professionals, beat Siwon Kim? Let's reverse that. You got 20 out there.
20 out there. Okay. Assuming all 20 of them actually play, 16.
You say 16 beat Siwon Kim.
16 beat Siwon Kim. Remember, they had to qualify for that. So they're playing good golf right now because their qualifiers are pretty tough.
I'm not going to be that brutal. I'm going to say 8. Because I almost, it's funny though. With I almost don't really factor them in because of the last 4 years. Only there have been 80 over the last 4 years, and only 4 have made the cut. So they're it's kind of a rough situation for them.
Well, they're kind of like amateurs at the Masters. You don't actually, they're part of the tradition. You don't expect them to show up, like actually show up,
Oh, it's a historic thing when they make the cut.
Exactly.
Because some years none of them make the cut.
Exactly. And we don't bash on them for that. It's just the reality of the situation. Like the handicap is so different in golf. There's 4 different handicaps, I believe. There's just daily play handicap. There's club tournament handicap. There's mid-tier pro handicap. And there's big pro handicap. Right now, Siwon Kim's playing at mid-tier tour handicap. And he just can't figure out how to jump to big tour handicap yet. That's what I see out of him.
What do you think of DJ and Cam Smith now? They just were in that playoff, heading into the PGA. Did they just peak at the right time again?
I think they did. Cam had been trending in the right direction for quite a while now. He didn't have any nagging injuries like DJ did. Because remember, DJ pulled out of the Jeddah event before it started back in February, I think. And he's kind of looked a little rough ever since. When he first showed up at Mayakoba, he had a little bit of a beer gut, he worked it off, got back in shape. He's looking sharp now. Cam trending in the right direction back the whole entire time. And golf's kind of funky. Once you hit that stride, it could last for 4 weeks and you just, don't have a bogey for 4 weeks, and I'm looking at both of them and I'm putting some money in that direction right there this week. That's a place to put money.
Is there has to be some odds out there for a LIV player to win it? Just any one of them.
Ooh, that'd be good. Brooks Koepka definitely in that conversation. I mean, there's 17 LIV players that are going to be at the event. Of the 17 that are at the event, I see 6 of them having a real chance of winning. And I'm not bashing the rest of the players. I mean, there's always an outside chance of anybody winning, but there's 6 in the field that I'm just like, if this guy wins, it wouldn't surprise anybody. And the golf media has done enough backwashing of their bad comments from a year ago to where it could work for them. They've put enough reverse on their bad comments from a year ago to make it to where it's palatable for one of those 6 to win.
The internet is forever. I routinely dig up what they said then and now. It's ridiculous. What are your thoughts on Phil's chances, considering he did not do well at LIV Tulsa, but it doesn't really matter for him? He shows up inspired, like the Masters. I had no expectations for Phil at the Masters.
I think a lot of it comes down to who you're playing with. He was playing with Spieth on the final day, which Spieth is basically Phil Jr. in a lot of different ways. As far as, Phil will hit. People always talk about his wedge game, right? When somebody talks about how good their wedge game is, do you know what that actually means? It means they hit so many crappy shots that they have to play their wedges a lot.
Ouch.
That's the reality. When somebody says, "Hey, this guy's wedge game is phenomenal," what that really means is we've seen them hit a lot of wedge shots, which you don't hit very many wedge shots if your iron and drivers are good. That's just the truth. I mean,
I can't argue with that. That is factually correct.
Truth. I mean, and so Phil and Jordan are both players who, when they get on a heater, when their head's right, when everything's about them is right, when they're inspired, man, they're pin hunting like crazy. They're hitting every wedge shot right in the hole. they might hole 6 bunker shots in a weekend. And that pairing on Sunday was the best for both of those players. Similar pace, similar way of attacking the course, similar in that neither one of them probably ever closed their mouth for 5 seconds during the round because they're both doing self-talk the entire time, which is impressive. I think if Phil gets the right pairing, makes the cut, first off, that's most important, make the cut, and then finds himself within 6 shots on Sunday, he could make an argument, you know?
Here's a deeper question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Phil. He wins the PGA a few years ago.
Yep.
Then Diggsy's boy, Alan Shipnuck, basically throws him under the bus, even though if you always listen to Shipnuck, he always accuses Phil Mickelson of throwing Tom Watson under the bus for the Ryder Cup pairings and stuff. So Shipnuck basically, Phil didn't play in the Masters the next year, even though Jay Monahan came out on record saying that it was because he decided to take some leave or sabbatical. But then later, I believe if you look it up, it was actually due to the fact that he was suspended.
Right.
So you can actually look it up. There's Jay Monahan says one thing, and then later it was actually a suspension. But basically, you draw back, Shipnuck took out the reigning PGA champions bid to win the Masters the following Masters. Thoughts on that?
We see that often in all sports. Broadcasters and media, we're always looking for they're always looking for an opportunity, and we're always looking for an opportunity to have that viral conversation moment. And I say it like that. I don't say it as like viral as in like just to be crazy for the point of being crazy. I mean it for the point of having good conversation. That's what every broadcaster and media person, I think, at heart really wants to do, is have good conversation, because that's most important. If the conversation sucks, then there's no point in having it. I mean, so obviously if you give somebody like him, who has a pretty good following, a pretty good platform, an incendiary topic that's very interesting, you can create some trouble. We saw this with Sam Storm. Is it Sam Storms, the guy who busted Jordan? No, Sam Brown, the guy who busted Jordan in '92 with the Jordan Rules book.
But it's weird there with Shipnuck that he, after doing all this, he was like, well, Phil, he's tweeting from London, Phil doesn't seem to want to talk to me. I mean, how tone deaf and unself-aware can you be? Unless, of course, he's just trying to constantly self-promote at this point. And as a journalist, unfortunately, he's trying to make himself the story.
And that can happen. I mean, we saw him in the Full Swing documentary. I mean, I've never talked to him personally. I think that like I said, I think he's made strides in the right direction as far as his commentary on LIV in the past year, ever since London. And I think part of it's because LIV was smart enough to continually evolve their product. But yeah, when you have a relationship with a player, they'll tell you things that you wouldn't get anywhere else, right?
But also, just like the bro code, you can hang out with your boys. That's the scariest part. You could be having a few beers with your buddies, you're saying stuff,
and forget who they are. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you forget that, just like, you're having your buddies, but once you create that relaxed environment and you're speaking off the record, you understand that that person's not going to take advantage of you and try to throw you on the bus. Just like in any situation, you go to Vegas, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Right.
So there's just kind of this unspoken rule about what's going to happen, what's going on. And then Shipnuck basically blows all of those out of the water. So every guy who's ever given an interview has to wonder, hey, what was on tape? What did I actually say there? Because you open a can of worms, right?
It's true. There are certain things that you just don't bring into conversation or whatnot. And I mean, we haven't seen him as close to LIV players this year as he was last year. And I think those type of opportunities cause that kind of rift. We're not seeing Dan Rappaport on from Barstool that he's on, or Foreplay, but we're not seeing Dan Rappaport out there as much on next to the players. Guess who's still inside the ropes though? Mike McAllister. That dude, he was positive from the get-go. He's fair about what he's talking about. The TUGR guys, they're still getting conversation points. The point is,
have you spoken with the TUGR guys?
I have spoken with them, not voice, but I have through Twitter, DMs, and all that jazz. Dude, I like them a lot.
I had them on.
Okay.
So I did an episode with them. You should definitely hit them up and get them on 54 Live.
I want to, because I love just how much they're focusing on accuracy.
You know what it is? It's performance based, not points based, and that's almost the best way to sum it up. It's basically like the handicap system, right?
Yeah.
You know your handicap, and if your handicap is better than the other guys, then you're better.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes, because now it's one thing to say there's a problem, and now we're at the point where the Tugger guys have come up with a solution. So now they should be at a point where they're comparing and contrasting the benefits of each system. And then if Tugger's better, how can you make any case for OWGR?
And you can't, because every single event they're posting the truth, which is, hey, our system, if you follow our system, which if you're a gambler, you're already following TUGR. I'm just telling you, you have
That's
to.
the most accurate system. Those guys have it down to a science. They're the ones you're going to trust.
Yes. I mean, and they're partnered with Bryson, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but Bryson, if I'm correct, Bryson's on their board of directors. Is that correct? Or like a board of influence, or he's involved with them. That's what I heard at one point. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, guys. It's hard to get it all one story straight. But if you're a gambler, you're already following TUGR. You're not following OWGR, because you're going to lose your house. So this is just the truth. I mean, 7% is the difference roughly on average for every single event. And it's bigger in majors, by the way. The percentage difference is bigger in majors. So if you're following and betting based on OWGR information, you're behind the eight ball. You're playing with paper money at this point.
Here's a final topic question for the day, and I feel like you and I actually vibe better than you and Diggsy's, probably potentially due to his Long Island accent. But
don't be hating on him. He's a good guy. He's really awesome.
But essentially, the way things are going, and Phil had brought this up earlier, that he sees the LIV trending upwards and the PGA Tour essentially, I guess, is trending downwards. And that was 8 months ago, 10 months ago or so. What would you say right now in terms of who's trending upwards, who's trending downwards? And if these trends continue, where does that leave the LIV Golf Tour versus the PGA Tour?
Now, what do you mean directly? Like you're talking about the tour itself, or the players themselves?
I would say the tour itself, okay. the respective tours, in terms of, for me, it seems the LIV Golf Tour, you get a couple more big names, and now you're clearly, in terms of at least the top 15 players, better than the PGA Tour.
Well, and that's where we hear the rumors about. A couple months ago, there was a conversation that got out or quoted or whatnot. I don't know who spoke it originally, but it was talking about the potential for expansion next year. And it made sense, because there was, what was the big thing that was going to draw players over? LIV can't just throw $100 million at every single medium to large name size player. They can't go throw a $300 million at Max Homa and say, hey, leave the PGA Tour. You haven't won a major, but come on over. They can't do that. So captaincy, which does give equity ownership of your team, is huge. And that's been really attractive as far as getting players over there. So when you have all the captains situated out, you can't really do that without creating expansion. And so I think we're going to see expansion in the next year, 2 to 3 new teams, kind of like what the article was suggesting. And it makes sense, because like when I was at Tulsa, I was sitting in the birdie shack, which is number 9. There was several times throughout the day, about a 20 to 30 minute gap where you didn't see any shots hit into you. And it's not a bad thing. It's not
I saw the same thing at Tulsa. There'd be a long delay, like a 30. No, I mean at Tucson.
Yeah,
it'd be like a 30-minute gap, and you're like, wait, where's the next group?
Right, and that's not a horrible thing. Obviously, you don't want the players just hitting at each other all day long. I mean, that's going to create some fun. When you got Pat Perez, who, by the way, Pat Perez makes zero wasted motions whatsoever. I don't know if you saw him at all when you were in Tucson, but the guy is like the exact opposite of Max Homa as far as body language. Like Max Homa constantly looks like he's trying to lower his A1C. And
so funny.
And Pat Perez is just like, he's fixing his divots while he's still walking. He doesn't even. Everybody else is doing preferred lies, and Pat Perez just walks up to it and just chips it right at the hole. It's so fun to watch, because he's just complete polar opposite of so many of the guys out there. So if you stack the field too deep as far as players, then yeah, Pat Perez is going to get angry. But there's room on the course for about 2 to 3 more teams without really messing with pace of play overall, I think. So we could see that next year, and that would be really LIV's biggest option to poach a big name. Also, of course, the situation with the top 75 that you were mentioning earlier.
Right, exactly. If you're not into the elevated events, the designated events next year, there's no point in being on the basically elevated Corn Ferry Plus tour,
The elevated
right?
Corn Ferry Plus tour.
That's what.
Yeah.
No one. Now your sponsors aren't going to be happy because you're not even on you're not on the real PGA tour. You're on the other one.
Right, and the players to keep an eye out on. I mean, obviously, they would love to poach somebody like John Rahm. They would love to poach somebody like
He's the linchpin. That's the last.
Xander.
Imagine you get Rahm. To me, Rahm is worth more than any other two in the top. Maybe. Well, you're not going to get Scheffler. Scheffler's not going to go.
No, because Scheffler's he's a PGA Tour guy. I mean, and when I say PGA Tour guy, I'm meaning traditional, zero personality shown, very just business like, and that's not a hate. It's just a reality. Like PGA Tour, they love their Justin Thomases, they love their Jordan Spieths, they love their Max Homas, the guys who just keep it all in, and you don't see anything on of them. You don't see any real emotions. And if they do show emotion, they cut away from them as quick as possible.
But you need that emotion, just like UFC. You need it to build interest in the fans.
Yeah. If I had to put a dollar value on it right now, if I was LIV Golf, this might sound crazy to you. If I was putting a dollar value on John Rahm, I would put him at $2.5 billion. I'm being serious.
Did you say 2.5 billion?
Billion.
Use the B word, sir.
I use the B word. That is to me, that's what John Rahm is worth right now. If I was LIV and I was trying to poach John Rahm, that's the dollar value that I think he's worth as far as poaching.
I was thinking like 220 million.
It's not enough. That's not enough. You got to think about like what he actually means right now. This is not Phil. This is not DJ. This is not Ian Poulter. This is a 27-year-old man who has just won 4 tournaments this year.
Wait, but remember, these are also it's a weekend feel all around. So there's going to be asterisks on his wins too, because you turn on the Terminator mode, but it's overlapping with now we have Tony Finau and Max Homa superstars winning on these very depleted fields.
Well, you're correct. At the end of the day, though, what John Rahm is not the dollar value of himself right now. John Rahm is the dollar value for completely removing the legitimacy of the PGA Tour.
That is true.
And so that's why I use the word billion right there, because that's what he is. If you pull him out, now the DP World Tour is completely dead. You've killed the DP World Tour in one move, because they can't ban John Rahm. They can, but they're not going to. They can't ban. The PGA Tour now has to figure out what the heck do we do. Our most consistent player for the last 4 years is gone now. Our most consistent player, and our best player.
Here's my other question to you: this, even if things don't drastically change over the next year, but they just continue to play out as they are, PGA Tour keeps losing sponsors. Maybe LIV starts getting a few sponsors. It might be a slower bleed out. Where do you see the PGA Tour essentially in 3 to 5 years? Because even they've already gone through their war chest. They've found suddenly $160 million or so. You're spreading that out now. But at some point, you don't have these extra funds. There's less viewership, and then you have less sponsors, and you have less funds. And now you just entered a competition. You entered a gunfight with a knife. A knife. So you're like, you played by LIV's rules, trying to bust open the war chest. You dumped the tradition and legacy aspect. By now, as Rory says, it's an entertainment product. Now you're at the point you might as well go WWE, UFC, anything to jazz it up, because you're desperate for cash to keep the players going. But you've already instilled this stoicism in your most favored players. It's all over the place.
Right. You brought up WWE, and I was thinking in my head, like, how crazy would it be if Patrick Reed is on hole number 18 for him in a round to win it for the four aces, and you see Rory just run out of the crowd and body slam him on the putting green.
One of the best stories this year was Rory versus the T-Gate.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're interested in the Dubai Desert Classic, whereas
Yes.
otherwise, who cares?
You wouldn't be. And now they're not going to have that situation anymore because the DP World Tour fell in line, and it says, yes, Jay Monahan, we'll do whatever you want, Jay Monahan, who is single-handedly, by the way, the worst executive in any sport of all time, the worst chairman of any sport ever, commissioner. His actions single-handedly legitimize LIV. If he doesn't ban players last year, if he doesn't put all these stipulations, if he doesn't make all these changes,
the smear tactics, that it blew up in his face now. And so what's going to happen is you smeared the guys, that didn't work. Now they've survived that initial onslaught.
Yep.
And now your force is going over there. Your sponsors are leaving, and it's going to completely blow up in your face. And you're going to be known as the guy who basically, remember, the PGA Tour is essentially this nebulous web of it hosts events, it protects its members, but in so doing, to get its not-for-profit status. One of these slippery things goes out of place. They lose a not-for-profit status. They lose this competitive advantage. They lose one thing falls right now because, let's be real, they are allegedly a monopoly. Once you lose this alleged monopoly power, now you're playing ball by everyone's on the same playing field. Now you can't win.
And I think the PGA Tour still has control. I'm okay with where they're at. I really am. I like where LIV's at. LIV kind of operates kind of like the cool kids over in the corner. Like, we're not part of that system. We're the anti kids. We're the goth kids. We're the cool kids over here, just doing our own thing. Leave us alone. That's cool. That's why I enjoy it, because it's different. But I will say this, the PGA Tour, so long as they continue to have their focus be on snatching all the college kids, and they do that now because they actually basically, like, the top 10 college kids in their PGA Tour university rankings get either a PGA Tour card, a Korn Ferry card, or a Mackenzie Tour card, which is the Canadian Tour. And so as long as that happens, that's going to be, to me, what keeps the PGA Tour in control, because they're getting first right of access to all those upcomers.
Okay, here's my question to that then, is you got these guys who are college superstars.
Yeah.
And they go win a bunch of 3M Opens, John Deere Classics, but they don't win the majors. Ooh. And once again, now you have a situation, you'll have like a lot of these kind of a Max Homa, Tony Finau types, but those two guys, because they don't win the majors, you're winning, in volume, but you're not winning the right tournaments. And also, as we discussed, you don't necessarily have the opportunity or encouraged to show personality. Are you really a star then? Or you're just a guy who's operating the system that is going to have half of them playing in these non-elevated events, which are also getting no more exposure.
Right.
And I don't even see how bringing those guys up. Whereas on the opposite hand, you have Eugenio Chacarria, difficult name for me to pronounce. He wins in LIV Bangkok. Boom, you get the big money. Where do you think these players want to play more? Do you want to go through the PGA Tour system, have to try to work up through the non-elevated events to get into the elevated events, or go right over to LIV, be hanging with the fun guys? It's more of a good vibe anyway. You tell me.
And not only that, but like, the schedule is better because there's actually an end to the season. That's a huge benefit. Their schedule coincides with other events to where, like, hey, Carlos Ortiz took a week off and went over and played in a Mexican Tour event and won that, by the way, this year. It was awesome.
How awesome would that be if you can go back to your country's open? Like, the DP World Tour just shut down that opportunity.
Yeah.
It just cut off your nose, spite your face.
And so, like, Chikara is a prime example. A year ago, if anybody who wasn't like an actual like college golf announcer, or just a hardcore, ridiculous, dedicated cowboy fan, told me they knew who Eugenio Chacarra was, I would have to call their bluff on that. Eugenio Chikara is I think the ideal situation for a LIV golf development. Andy Ogletree, same thing. And you could say, well, Andy Ogletree was a U.S. Open, was a U.S. amateur champion. Nobody knows who the U.S. amateur champion is until he does something that's non-amateur, and that's just the truth. I love amateurs. I think it's an amazing accomplishment. But until they do something on the pro stage, even people like myself who follow golf closely, we don't know you. We know Eugenio Chikara. We know Andy Ogletree. We know James Pyatt. We know Turk Pettit, sadly. The point is that we know these guys that we would not have ever heard of otherwise until they became a top 10 player on the PGA Tour. And you can win on the PGA Tour and still not be a top 10 player. You know, did you actually know who Hudson Swafford is last year whenever he came over to LIV before he came on to LIV?
No, I know him more for his hip injury at LIV.
Yes, for his replacement at the start of the season. But you get what I'm saying, is that this is a guy who had won on the PGA Tour, and we still had no clue who he was.
100%.
Yeah.
As a final thought for today, I just wanted to reach out to you and just say how lucky we are that the mainstream media of golf, you know, the Golf Channel, etc., does such a poor job at conveying the facts that it gives us an opportunity to really go through it together, meet people out there. You know, I know you reached out to me because I'm shy and bashful, but now we're making this happen. I look forward to having you on more episodes.
Please.
And, you know, at some point we can get Digsies on here. Have you actually seen his face?
I mean, he has a separate profile that's like his own profile on Twitter.
That's basically He could be catfishing you. He could be a hideous person you don't even know.
Hey, you know, I bet you secretly homeboy is rocking some Fabio looks, man.
But it's funny that you're doing this, you know, you've done this whole season with him and you never just like FaceTimed each other or anything?
No, we didn't. You know, it's just easier for recording purposes sometimes because it makes the file so much smaller. So it's easy to mess with and you know, edit an audio file. It's not always easy sometimes to do with like YouTube situations.
But that doesn't really like you wouldn't just hit him up and be like, hey, let's FaceTime and get to know each other a little bit. That's what's weird.
I guess so. I don't know. We're bros and we talk quite a bit throughout the weeks or whatever. But you know, he's busy. I'm busy. You know, in my off time, I'm trying my best to get my golf game right. I'm trying my best to, you know, keep my business afloat.
What's your handicap now?
Plus 0.5.
That's amazing. I'm a 10, and yesterday I played like I should sell all my golf clubs. Dude, like it was one of those ones where just like it's super slow round, and I'm like, I think I might have to tap out of playing golf. Be sure to listen to 54 Live on Apple Podcast. Subscribe, share, and like. This guy is my new favorite podcast. Forget this channel. It sucks.